class of 1965. He will also be recognized for his heroism in Vietnam. His plaque reads, "Citation to accompany the award of the Bronze Star to Lieutenant Junior Grade William C. Carr, United States Coast Guard, for service as set forth in the following citation." Lieutenant Junior Grade Carr is cited for meritorious service in connection with the operations involving conflict with an opposing foreign force in the Republic of Vietnam on 10 March 1968. On that date, enemy artillery fire struck the Naval Support Activity Detachment Qua Viet LST ramp, causing many secondary explosions and fires. Lieutenant Junior Grade Carr brought his vessel, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Point Ardent, across the rough Qua Viet bar and into the vicinity of the LST ramp. He sent ashore a firefighting party which successfully secured much of the burning material, towed an ammunition-laden vessel away from the fire, and used his vessel's communication facilities to organize further firefighting parties and medical assistance. He then maneuvered Point Ardent alongside the ramp to assist in fighting the fire. When a large explosion severely damaged his vessel, he moved away from the ramp, taking a doctor and several wounded personnel with him. Lieutenant Junior Grade Carr's ability to identify and take appropriate action and to organize the men and facilities at his disposal were instrumental in reducing the damage and casualties in this action. His alert thinking, prompt action, and devotion to duty were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. I would like to invite Mr. Carr to the podium for his brief remarks.
Can you hear me?
Yes. No. No, Dad. No.
Several weeks ago, your homecoming was my class of 1965's 50th reunion. The weekend was superb. The medallion ceremony was the highlight. Likewise, the planning, preparation, attention to detail, and execution of the events of this day are proving to be of likewise quality and performance. Kudos, hats off, to the first class cadets Andrew Britton and those who assisted so competently. Paul Puddington, Sarah Sorensen, your president, first class president, Michael McGee, and the whole of Delta Company and Lieutenant Commander Jesse Diaz. If I were writing your fitness reports, these would be very positive. I want to add a little portion here at a time. On Wednesday, well, after a couple of days, I was trying to get a hold of Andrew Britton. We finally got together on Wednesday afternoon. And I asked him the question. We were having a bit of a difficult time with our cell phone connection. And I was asking him basically if you were here and you wanted to thank your classmates for their assistance in pulling off your duties of ceremonial responsibilities for these kinds of events. So what would you tell them? What would you want to say? What would you want me to say? Well, in the process of that conversation, what he really thought I had asked was I was asking him what he'd like me to say here in this presentation to you in terms of this recognition for me. And he put that together in a very good email to me that I received late Wednesday night. And he had 4 things that he wanted. The first 3 I'm going to cover here in my presentation, and already part of that. And the 4th was a very interesting question. And the question had to do, if you had to do it over again, what was it that you didn't get prior to your commission in terms of your service afterwards? I just want to say, without going into it, I had the honor to be my class project manager for a book that the class of 1965 put together. It's called oh my goodness, A Gift of Leadership. We had 114 in our class graduate. We had 91 contribute an essay, so we have a little compendium of the book. We donated it to our class advisor, gave him the gift of it, and then we gifted that book to the class of 2015 as part of our link in the chain. On page 69 through 72, I've answered that question that Mr. Britton has asked in terms of what it would be that I would have wanted as a cadet. All your company commanders, company officers, sorry, your company chiefs have a copy of that book, and if you're interested in the answer, read the essay. I'd like to begin with a request. Would all cadets 20 years of age or older please stand and remain standing? Within 4 years, each of you standing will be at least 24 years of age. 24 years was my age in 1968 as Lieutenant JG and commanding officer of my 2nd Afloat Command, the 82-foot patrol gunboat Point Arden, based out of Da Nang and I Corps, the northernmost corps of the 4 Corps in South Vietnam. What I'm going to share with you today is a trauma kept to myself for 48 years, until May of this year, when Lieutenant Commander Diaz called to inform me I had been selected for this honor. Since that phone call, the lid of that deeply buried Pandora's box is opened. I am going to attempt now the difficult task of taking you back to that time. Please be seated. Please cue up the video. March 10th, 1968, I Corps, Vietnam, 0805 hours. Observed fire and secondary explosions from 3rd Marine Battalion Base Camp on the Qua Viet River just south of the DMZ. Sounded general quarters, taking Point Arden through high surf into Riverhead to provide gunfire support with our 550 caliber machine guns and mounted 81 millimeter cannon. Entering the inlet, was informed by Marine Base Commander their ammunition staging area atop their LST ramp was on fire, a result of an NVA mortar attack just minutes before. Fire was in several large 10-foot stacks of ammunition on elevated tarmac area. Burning cloth sandbags were stacked on top of white phosphorus night illumination flares, which in turn were on top of 175 millimeter howitzer artillery rounds, all encased in wooden pellets. The burning sandbags were igniting the flares under them, which then were popping up and floating back down into the stacks all over the tarmac. Fire was spreading quickly. Organized LCU, barge, and tug Navy personnel to run those lines up from the river, to run hose lines up from the river. I dispatched Point Arden crew of 4 under Chief Bosun Mate Bill Tugman to protect the main ammunition dump to the rear of the LCU ramp staging area. What I remember 5 hours of intense firefighting, each hot hour feeling like days. 3 thunderous explosions amidst many, many, many secondary explosions. Each pouring very hot shrapnel, spent shrapnel, but very hot shrapnel, almost feeling like rain coming down, covering the Point Arden from bow to stern, which wound up eventually 2 to 3 inches of shrapnel. The blasts and shrapnel wounded many and destroyed the hose lines. With crew at minimum complement, we got Point Arden underway, and to departed Qualiette, twice evacuated wounded by helicopter. I could account for 2 Navy killed in the firefighting and 30 wounded. 4 of the 30 were Point Arden crew. Each of that Point Arden crew did their duty commendably. They followed all commands while at the same time taking matters into their own hands, making decisions that would be their own personal medals of bravery and courage for life. All frightened and blessed to live, second by precious seconds. That crew, some of whom are here or represented here today, are deserving of this recognition and honor. Each has their own deeply personal story. Mine started with shouting from the Navy ammo lighter that Goff, one of their crew, was missing in the ammo stacks. It was clear no one from that barge was going back up to him. I started running up the ramp into the stacks. My brain at the same time flashed, "This is stupid. You're going to die." Before my body could hesitate, it hit me clearly that I had to look for that man. I had to search so I didn't ever have to deal with guilt. Duty, at that precise moment, was defined for me. I searched through those stacks. I didn't find Goff. As I got back on board Point Arden, still alive, I had a heavy, ominous feeling, immediately followed by the deafening blast and shockwave of the first of the 3 major explosions. I think about Goff often. His name is not on the Vietnam War Memorial Wall. Those who are truly responsible for this recognition today were my crew. Hold your applause, please. Chief Warrant Officer Fulcher, my executive officer, was wounded at the helm, holding the Point Arden bow steady on the LST ramp against the swift river current. The first explosion wildly rocked Point Arden, blowing out all the bridge windows and causing extensive damage throughout the cutter. Chief Bosun Mate Tugman received shrapnel wounds to the head. He and his team were credited with saving the main ammo dump behind and to the rear of the staging area. Chief Tugman received the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star with Combat B. He is represented here today by 3 of his 6 daughters and 6 more from his surviving family. Second class gunner's mate, Gordon Landon, here today, was part of the firefighting from the river. Wounded with shrapnel to his right thigh, actually it was the left thigh, wasn't it? From the first explosion, his Navy partner on a parallel hose line coming up lost his left eye to shrapnel. They helped each other, one blind and the other unable to walk, moved down the beach to a helicopter aid station, and were medevaced to the aircraft carrier Iwo Jima. During his 10-day recovery on the aircraft carrier Iwo Jima, he learned 6 to 9 had been killed from the doctors and nurses, and that 98 had been wounded. The video that you just saw was taken by Gordon Landon, and when he told me this about 2 weeks ago, I thought to myself, what in the hell were you doing taking newbies? He reminded me that I had him standing by until we could figure out what to do, which was when the movie ended, and we got into action, basically. And Gordon put him on the ground to run the lines up from the river. After Vietnam, Gordon stayed in the Coast Guard Reserves for 20 more years and served 36 years as an Oregon State Trooper and retired. Third class electronics technician Harold Morton, after Vietnam, went on through OCS to become a Coast Guard fixed-wing aviator, retiring after another 20 years. He was not able to make it today, although I talked with him extensively. 17 individual medals, ribbons, and combat Bs were awarded this Point Ardent crew for their quality of performance. Would all of the Point Ardent crew and their families please stand and be recognized. Take this recognition beyond my crew, being Veterans Day weekend, and to our extended families, to those who serve this great nation. Do you know enough of them? Do you know their stories? Let me give you two examples, actually a third. I just met Peggy Crowdy, a business associate that I've worked with a long time. His father, too, was captain of the Cadets. He did survive the Bataan Death March. He did survive the POW camps. He did return to the United States, but he was a broken man, totally destroyed man. He, too, deserves recognition. Rosalie Bennett is a high school class of mine. Her Navy husband served 3 tours in Vietnam, with his 3rd tour retrieving and ferrying wounded and patched up Marines and Army to and from the Colleton, a U.S. Navy hospital ship outside the gun line. Rosalie and I have wondered together of the probability of his having been involved with any of the Point Ardent crew or other wounded that fateful day. John and Patty Offenberg have been friends of Judy's and mine since shortly after my return from Vietnam. John never met his father, an Army Air Corps trainer of pilots who died on a routine training mission in 1942, just 30 days before John was born. John himself was rescued from a capsized sailboat in a suddenly turbulent Lake Michigan 50 years later in 1992. A Traverse City Coast Guard helicopter found John clinging to the keel of his boat, unconscious from hypothermia. The swimmer and that crew saved John from certain death. Rosalie, John, and Patty, would you please stand and be recognized?
Thank you.
I believe the probability of this Corps of Cadets having to confront the growing threat of in-country terrorism will parallel and exceed by far what was experienced by any officer from any academy class of those Coast Guard Vietnam War years. Each of you must prepare yourself today and each day so that you too are able to do your duty. You must insist and help your crew prepare themselves so they too are able to do their duty. And they will do their duty, each and every one of them. Being prepared will allow you to act intelligently and aggressively, as did I, my crew, those before us that we've honored today, and as will you after us. Heroism is not something for which you train. Rather, what happens is we sometimes are confronted with extraordinary circumstances. We do our duty, and sometimes some people recognize that as heroism. When you are called, do your duty with honor and humility and gratitude for having been able to serve and live through that service. I hope what I experienced 48 years ago in the Qualiette has today given you credible insight into what is behind our motto of Semper Paratus. Think about it. Live it. Thank you for this honor for myself and for my crew, and for those who have served and survived, in life or in recent or distant memory. Thank you, God bless America, and each and every one of you.